أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتم ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين.
You can take your Quran.
Okay. How do I take this off?
Folks, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. MashaAllah, the food must have been good, hence everybody has lots of energy. Very good. Hayya. That's okay. The amazing part about good food is it means I don't need a microphone. So if the microphone is ringing, if you guys can't hear me in the back, put up your hand. If you ever have trouble hearing me at any point, put up your hand. I will raise the volume. Let me just open my notes so we can get started. I'll share with you guys something interesting. For those of you who are joining online as well, may Allah bless you. Good to see you guys again. You'll see a new setup. It's a wonderful banner to remind you where we are and what you're missing out on if you are at home. A whiteboard to help me visually illustrate what I'm trying to say. And a funny story for you guys before we go any further. It's not a funny story, it's reality. You see, if we have to teach something, I am not a scholar or anything like that, so if I have to teach, I need either a book or my phone or a laptop with some news and some notes and some information. But those who taught us, who are ulama of the highest caliber, walillahi alhamd, they were able to teach and educate without materials in front of them. It's different. Why? Because the place of their knowledge is here. The place of our knowledge is at our fingertips. Big difference, right? Uncle was telling me before I started, he had his phone here. Then he came to collect it. Such a wonderful gentleman. And he did it why? Not because he was worried I was going to steal his phone. He did it for my benefit. He said, imagine in case you open his phone by accident looking for your notes for the halaqah, we're going nowhere. I said, yeah, you're right. It's better I have only my phone in front of me. طيب. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وأسلم على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. After we listen to the recitation of the Quran by Rayyan, may Allah bless him and his family, we will continue inshaAllah with our lessons of fiqh. We said the halaqat on Saturday for the year 2023 inshaAllah will focus on fiqh al-Islami, the fiqh of the Muslim life, with a very special commitment that we made to studying tahara and salah. And if Allah gives us the opportunity to study more than that, we will. But our priority is to understand how we are as Muslims to be and to remain pure and in a clean state, and what is the Islamic fiqh regarding purification, and also the most important thing in our life, which is our connection with Allah, our salah. What is the fiqh behind that? Last week we discussed what fiqh means, and we said fiqh is the human understanding of the application of the Sharia. Fiqh is not the Sharia. The Sharia comes from Allah and His Messenger ﷺ, but the human understanding of how to apply the Sharia is what we call fiqh. Now, obviously we covered enough things last week. This week, inshallah, we are going to continue. And we have few things to discuss. The first thing I want to share with you guys is the categories of purification. The categories of purification. We talk purification, then a question comes to mind: what needs to be purified? What needs to be purified? The answer to that is we are going to break it down that there are three categories of purification. And you can follow with me. I'm not going to try to write the word purification. But the first category of purification is ritual purification. Anybody have an idea what ritual purification could mean? Think of what you know about tahara and purification. What could ritual purification be? So I heard wudu, that is correct. Wudu, tayammum, ghusl, these are ritual purifications. The ghusl of a dead body after he or she has passed away is another example of ritual purification. Somebody might ask, why do you define it as ritual purification and not just regular, normal purification? And I'll share with you the line of thinking. If we think, deeply enough, is wudu really physical purification, or is it an act of ibadah, a ritual performance of purification? There are obviously two schools of thought. There's two ways of looking at it. There are those who believe that wudu is physical purification, that the goal of Allah was that we clean our hands and we clean our face and we clean our feet and we rinse out our mouth and our nose. And there are those who say that the purification of wudu is for a physical reason. Who agrees with this? Don't be scared. Who agrees that wudu is meant to be physical purification? Good. Who doesn't agree? Who thinks wudu is not for physical purification? You cannot also not raise your hand. Otherwise we have a problem. Maybe the mic is needed. I have one fellow who's confident enough, Rayyan, may Allah bless him. Right? He thinks it's both. He thinks it's both. Both. What else? There's only 4 or 5 of you have given me your feedback. Again, what we're trying to figure out here is, we're talking about ritual purification. The example of wudu came up. We're going to get to others shortly. And we're saying that, do you think that the goal of the wudu is to physically clean ourselves? If the answer is yes, then yes, you believe it's physical. Or is it not necessarily to physically clean, but it's an act of ibadah and it's more ritualistic than it is physical? I need to hear more feedback. This kidney, some of you call it a brain, has to be engaged if we're going to learn fiqh. Fiqh means, if you translate fiqh from Arabic to English, it means deep understanding. Then we cannot study fiqh while this guy is off. Fiqh requires critical thinking and deep understanding. So what are some of the other thoughts and feedback? So far we have Rayyan on his own in one camp saying that wudu is not physical and it is ritual, meaning it's an ibadah. A handful of you folks said it's a little bit of both. Somebody is saying,
I think it might be spiritual purification, the original intent, but any physical purification is advantageous, like byproduct.
Interesting. So he's mixing the two and saying that it's spiritual by nature, but the physical benefit is obviously there. Okay, I'm going to put Rayyan in an awkward position. What made you think that wudu is spiritual rather than physical cleaning? If it was just a guess, that's fine too. You can tell me I just guessed and we'll move on. You just guessed, no problem. Okay. Allow me to share with you that if we say that wudu is for physical purification, we will run into a problem, which is, how then do you explain that Allah allowed us to pray using tayammum? Now we're stuck. If Allah's goal was that you need to wash your body and clean yourself before you can pray, then how come Allah allows you to make tayammum and pray if you don't have water? Obviously, without a shadow of a doubt, tayammum is not physical purification, it is ritual purification. Meaning what? It's an act of ibadah. It has a goal to mentally prepare oneself, to put me and you in the mindset to be prepared to stand before Allah. And that is why wudu and tayammum and ghusl and all of that stuff, it comes under ritual purification, meaning it's an act of ibadah. It's not necessarily physical in nature. I mean, it is physical in nature, obviously, but the goal of it was not physical cleanliness. And if you want to look at it in a different way, do you think Allah and His Messenger expected that me and you only clean ourselves before salah? Like, what if you had dirt on your face or dirt on your hand and it wasn't salah time? Should you not go and wash it and clean it? Obviously you should. Then it's not that Allah and His Messenger expected that only for salah do you go wash your hands. No. That action is an act of ibadah. And it has big goal of preparing you for salah. It has a big objective of getting you in the right state of mind to engage in that meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second type of purification is physical. For those of you who are joining at home, I apologize, at some level you are being left out because maybe you cannot engage and share your thoughts with us, but inshallah one day you will be able to. That's something that I look forward to working on. But until then, the second type of purification is physical. Any idea what an example of that could be? Please don't use the example of wudu again. Let's move on. What is an example of physical purification? Shower. Okay, good. Which one of these needs to be tidied? I think it's this one. What else, guys? Physical purification that is not necessarily an act of ibadah. This is okay. Ahbab, physical purification. Do you only clean yourself for ibadah purposes? Somebody said shower, it's a good example. It is correct. What else? I'm not going to let you guys go this easily.
Swimming.
Swimming, no. That's an idea though. Come on, what else? Physical purification?
Cleaning with dirt after dog saliva.
Okay, cleaning with dirt after dog saliva. We'll get to that one day inshallah. Very interesting though. Okay. Brushing your teeth. Yeah, why not? Good. What else? Eat? Eating is purification by eating? No. Ahbab, physical purification, or what we call in Arabic tahara hissiya, is the physical removal of anything dirty. Washing your clothes, washing your face when you get up. You might not need to make wudu. Maybe you prayed fajr and took a nap. But when you get up, as Ustad Agu said, you will brush your teeth and wash your face. There's some stuff beside your eye, you'll rinse it all off. This is physical purification, or tahara hissi. Anything physically dirty, it's part of our deen that we clean it. Taban, obviously, akramakumullah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all dignity and goodness in this world and the hereafter. But obviously, when we go to the bathroom, there is physical purification that comes and that is required. And we do that primarily with water, but there are other ways that we can do that as well if we don't have water. Then physical purification is cleaning any filth or anything dirty off of one's body and it's not necessarily ritual in nature. It's nothing that Allah and His Messenger prescribe. So Allah and His Messenger did not prescribe brushing your teeth when you wake up per se. They didn't describe, for kids to wash their feet when they come inside after being out in the summer in the playground. But this is tabi'i, it's natural, it's by nature that if the human body has any dirt or anything filthy on it, you will clean yourself. This is the second category of purification. And the third category, if you guys can see, is what we will call spiritual purification or purification of one's heart. Okay? So there are three levels of purification. Ritual, which is stuff Allah prescribed, it's an act of ibadah. Wudu, tayammum, ghusl, etc. Physical, anything that the human being finds as dirty that he has to clean. Spiritual, literally the cleaning of one's heart and one's soul, one's inner self. Okay? Anybody who studied Islam at any level will understand that this third category is arguably the most important. But you will not find this being spoken about in the books of fiqh because it's a different discipline of Islam altogether. This is the discipline of, character development, spirituality, developing one's relationship with Allah and His creation. In a nutshell, it's what we talk about on Sunday mornings, right? When we have those halaqat on akhlaqul Muslim, the manners and the behavior of the Muslim, that's all about this third category of spiritual cleaning of the heart. Where do we get this idea from? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran very clearly says, يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. Allah talks about the day of judgment, and He says on that day your children and your money will not help you except if you come to Allah with a clean heart. Right? So that clean heart concept that Allah spoke about in the Quran, there is an entire science and there's an entire study behind it, how to clean and purify one's heart, and that is a type of purification. Everyone clear now? We all understand that there is ritual purification in Islam, there is physical purification of impurities and filth in Islam, and there is spiritual purification of the heart that we study on Sundays. Next topic. Najasa versus dirty things. We've all heard of the term most likely najasa, right? Najasa in the Islamic fiqh is something that is ritually impure. And this is important to understand. Najasa is something that is ritually impure. And there are other things that are not ritually impure, but they are dirty. I'll give an example. If somebody uses the washroom and something exits from their body, then this is najasa exiting their body. And if that najasa was to get on their clothes, then their clothes are now soiled by najasa that has to be cleaned. But that is not equivalent to somebody who works somewhere, maybe in a mechanic shop, and he's covered in grease and the time of Asr is about to expire, and he cleaned his hands quickly and was able to make wudu, but his clothes are dirty, he has oil all over himself, right? He's not in a state of najasa. He's dirty, yes, his clothes are dirty, yes, but can he make salah in his overall suit that is covered with engine oil and grease? The answer is yes. So this is dirty, it's something not clean, but it's not najas by nature. There's no najasa on him. But those stuff that are najas, if they get onto our body, they need to be, not only our body, if they get onto our body or our clothes or even our surroundings. So mathalan, one cannot pray somewhere where there's najasa in front of him. You can't put your head on the ground and make sajda where there's najasa. And again, it doesn't mean that your house has to be free from najasa before you can pray. Right? But the area where you're going to pray should be free from najasa. It doesn't mean all your clothes have to be clean, but the clothes you are wearing to pray should be free from najasa. Now the question comes, what is najasa? What types of things qualify or quantify as najasa? And the answer to this, I'll state the obvious ones and then open it up for you guys to add the tricky ones. Human urine and feces is number one on the list is najis. And if it gets on someone's clothes, they have to clean that. We'll talk about how in a bit. Beyond that, we have something interesting that the Prophet ﷺ taught us. The waste or the dung of animals that we don't eat, that are not halal to eat. And can anybody think why? I'll just share with you. The urine of مثلا a goat or a chicken is not najis if it gets on you, believe it or not. I'm not advising that it's clean. Don't use that and go store it in your house. I'm saying that if somebody had by accident the urine of a goat on his clothes are not najis. That urine is not najasa. But this is the opposite of an animal that we don't eat. Obvious example is the pig. Muslims don't eat the pig. If the urine or the feces of a pig was to get on your clothes, then now those clothes are najis. Does anybody know why, or can you think of a reason why the Prophet ﷺ did not make us deal with the urine and feces of animals that we eat as najasa? What could the hikmah possibly be? The reason that we are going to identify here is going to be very important, because you will find that this is consistent throughout the Sharia and throughout the fiqh that we study. The Prophet ﷺ, his approach to life was to not make things difficult for people. And he ﷺ, he understood that, many of the Muslims will be maybe farmers, and the farmer, high chances are the meat that people eat, those animals, he will take care of. And he will spend his whole day, morning to night, with the cows and with the camels and with the sheep and with the goat and with whoever. And if he had to be careful to make sure that none of their waste gets on his clothes, this would be a level of takalluf. This will become some hardship for him. It would become a very awkward inconvenience. Like, my job is to work with these guys. These guys are not like humans. They don't go to the bathroom somewhere when they have to go. They do what they need to do whenever they need to do. Then the Prophet ﷺ was cognizant of this, and that's why his ruling was that the animals that we eat, their urine and feces does not cause najasa when it reaches our clothing. Again, this is not to say, please nobody understand that Sahaba were okay to work with the camels and be covered in urine. Nobody is saying that. But we are saying that in case, I hope we understand the level of difficulty. Imagine the farmer, that would almost mean that whenever he leaves his animals, he has to change his clothes. Because the chances that some urine from some animals was on the floor and touched his pants, or splashed from the ground to his shirt, is almost 99.9%. And so the Prophet ﷺ wanted to remove that obstacle, and that's why he allowed that the animals that we eat and the animals that we take care of, this is something that if their urine and feces was to get on us, it is not najis. But what we were trying to teach was that the dung and the leftover waste of animals that we do not eat is najis if it was to get onto your clothing. And as I said, there are many examples like this. You will see the Prophet ﷺ making rulings and giving, ahkam that are meant to make things easy for people. And it's a mindset and it's a philosophy that the Muslim should develop. As a rule of thumb, the faqih, the one who teaches and applies the fiqh, his job is to make the religion applicable for the people, not the other way around. This is very, very important. Many times you'll find somebody who, mashallah, is learned, he's qualified, and he's in the position of a faqih, meaning he gives fatwa. As a rule of thumb, I think I told you guys this last week, if somebody's fatwa is not being applied by the masses, there's something wrong with his fatwa. Because the deen was meant to be applied. You cannot give fatwa on behalf of the deen of Allah something that is impossible to live by. Then what's the point? The whole religion was meant to be lived and applied. Then the job of the faqih is to make this sharia practical and livable for the people around him or her. And if you find the faqih complicating things, sometimes, may Allah protect us and our families, you find the alim or the faqih giving fatwa to his jama'ah that his own kids at home can't apply. I'll give you one example because this maybe is recent in our memory. The guy giving the fatwa that watching football or soccer is haram. Yeah, habibi, your kids at home are enjoying the World Cup and they are wearing the jersey and they are cheering and they have all their gear ready to go. Then this fatwa is not practical. It cannot be. There's 2 billion Muslims in the world. Out of the 2 billion, 1.9 billion of them are watching football. And then you sit to give your fatwa that no, football is haram, and those who watch it, they are committing a major sin, and Allah will be angry at them. But where are you going with this? This is not practical. This is not what the fiqh is for. The fiqh is for making life, not only livable, but making life reasonably practical in a way that the sharia is something that people can abide by. Because the moment you make the sharia as something that people can abide by, what do you achieve? Who will practice it? There's no point. And so the Prophet ﷺ throughout his life, dealing with the Sahaba, teaching his ummah, me and you as well, he promoted an idea of making things reasonably easy for people. One other example, and then we'll move on inshallah. We may or may not be familiar with the Prophet ﷺ made it easier. He gave an easier prescription for the cleaning of the urine of a baby boy than he did of the baby girl. He differentiated between them. And he basically made it very easy and gave very generic advice about how to remove the impurity of a baby boy's urine. And, he intentionally went out of his way to simplify it. And the fuqaha debated and they thought about this. They said, what, scientifically speaking, is there a difference? What could the Prophet ﷺ have been after? And the conclusion that some of them reached was that chances are that, the little boys will be left time and time maybe in the care of their fathers, especially if the fathers are outside the home. And generally speaking, the father is not the one who is, the most well trained in looking after the child who made a mess. And so they said the Prophet ﷺ wanted to make it easier for his society. If the father wanted to bring his 2-year-old, for example, to the masjid for salah, so the wife at home can relax and take it easy, not have to worry about this toddler. The Prophet ﷺ imagined that chances are that the boy will be out of the house with the father. And the girl, maybe she would spend more time with her mother. Again, by the way, I'm not saying this is applicable today. I'm saying that in Arabia 1400 years ago, maybe that was the norm. We don't have this in writing anywhere to find it. But this is fuqaha thinking. That the men, maybe they would take the boys out of the house. And the women, they were generally at home. And even between the kids, they kept the girls closer to them. Then the Prophet ﷺ wanted to make sure that it wasn't mission impossible for a Muslim man to take his son outside the house and then eventually need to pray or whatever. He made it easier for them. Another example of the Prophet ﷺ, simplifying things, making it easy so people are able to live and practice. Other examples of najasa that the Muslim should be aware of is the menstrual blood of the sister. And the women, they asked the Prophet ﷺ about what to do when it gets on their clothing. And the Prophet ﷺ said, wet it and rub it, meaning wash it, and if needed, scratch it, and then wash it again, and it's good to go. Even if you have stain, this, that, whatever, if you've washed it, you've rubbed it, you've scratched it, you've done the best that you can. Scratching, I don't mean get a knife and shred the cloth. I mean you did your reasonable due diligence to try and wash it. In our time, obviously there's washing machines. Nobody's figuring out by hand how to wash clothes anymore. Maybe some are, especially some very delicate items. Maybe our families at home are figuring out how to clean it without ruining it. But this is what the Prophet ﷺ taught the women of his ummah. Subhanallah, it came to my mind now just to share with you guys that Bani Israel, the people before us, the ummah before us, Allah prescribed for them that if najasa gets on their clothes, they had to cut the najasa off. And this was because they used to challenge the hukm of Allah, and so Allah wanted to fix them. He wanted to teach them a lesson. Allah tells us, by the way, in the Quran that أُحِلَّ لَكُمُ الطَّيِّبَاتِ وَيُحَرِّمُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْخَبَائِثِ. That's not the ayah that I had in mind, but the point is the same. Allah says for this ummah of Islam, the ummah of Muhammad ﷺ, He made haram things that are evil or filthy. And anything that is clean and wholesome and not harmful, He left it halal for us. This is contrary to what Allah did for Bani Israel. Bani Israel, Allah used their sharia to punish them because they went against the order of Allah and challenged Allah. Then Allah said, I'm going to show you how I can make your life difficult. And one of those ahkam that Allah made difficult for them, I don't know if you guys know, till today, those who practice Yahudiya, those who practice the Jewish tradition, they have very, very strict dietary laws. Right? The way that they eat and manage food is something you guys never imagined if you're not familiar with it. As an example, in the same meal, they cannot have meat and dairy. So those who practice that religion strictly have never, ever had a pizza with meat toppings on it. It's haram because there's cheese on the pizza. You cannot put, it's illegal, big sin to put meat with cheese. Or to eat any meat dish with yogurt. Like you have rice and chicken, or we have biryani, you want to use yogurt? Haram, never. Taban, anybody who came late like my sister, we're not talking about our sharia. We're talking about Yahudiya. Don't go from here thinking that the yogurt and biryani is haram together. But Allah did this for them to make their life difficult. Not only that, their sharia used to require that certain food groups need to be cooked separately. So they have pots for this and pots for that. And the one that we were talking about now that relates to what we're speaking about is that if najasa was to get on their clothes, they had to cut the piece of najasa off. And so the narrations mention that the people of Bani Israel used to have patchy clothes. Because anytime there's najasa, you cut, you put new patch, cut, put new patch, cut, put new patch. Then you find the guy walking half the clothes patch. Right? But our Ummah of Islam, the Ummah of Muhammad ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ prescribed as he taught the women, and the same applies for the men. If any najasa gets on your clothes, just wash it, and life moves on. What are some other examples of najasa, guys? What do you know? The brother mentioned dog saliva, that's next on the list. Very good. And we will get to that inshallah one day. And fun fact to mention over here, the dog is not najis, right? It's just the saliva of the dog. So don't, sometimes, by the way, I don't know if it's a Muslim thing or what it is, but many of us are scared of dogs, right? It's not only me, right? Don't make me feel bad. Many people are scared of dogs. I'm terrified. And I feel like many other Muslim kids are too. But Islam doesn't have a problem with the dog. The Sharia didn't say the dog is najis, never. Right? We can use, even in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they used the dogs for hunting. You can have a guard dog, you can have a pet dog, you can do whatever you want with a dog. It would be ill-advised to keep the dog in the house because of the fact that his saliva is najis, right? But shar'an, is it impermissible to own a dog? The answer is no, believe it or not. The issue with the dog is the saliva of the dog. And this is not a ritual thing, this is a physical thing. This is really a physical thing, right? Science today tells us that the saliva of the dog carries enzymes that are very harmful to human health and to our gut health. And those enzymes, if they get into our system, they actually grow into worms. And at that point, you have a major problem with digestion and a whole bunch of other problems. I'm not making this stuff up. You can Google it and look at it when you go home. And perhaps this is a hikmah for why the religion of Islam and the Prophet ﷺ specified that the saliva of the dog is najis. Subhanallah, in our beautiful country and many other Western nations, what do you find people doing? Kissing their dog. They obviously didn't know the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and they also didn't know the science behind why Muslims see the saliva of the dog as something that is impure. What else? Any other example, guys? What else is najis? None? War? Oh, the animal. Taban, yes, the meat of the pig is najis, right? So the Muslim should not handle that type of meat in an ideal world. People ask the question, what if we work in a facility that packages and this and that? It's not advice for the Muslim. If that is your only source of income, or even if somebody is at home watching and they happen to work in that field of packaging meat or something like that, or transporting meat, and among the things that they carry and they transport is pork, then it would be advised, if it's not going to kill you, to pursue alternative work. At least have the intention that you want to find some work that doesn't involve, touching and dealing with the najasa. And that is what we would advise. But yes, that is a good example. What else? Are there other animals that are najis? The answer is no. But it is from the list of najasa a dead animal that was not slaughtered, right? So if there is a dead animal, and this is physically, filthy as well. If there's a dead cow or dead whatever it is rotting away somewhere, that's considered najis. And it's something that we shouldn't touch, it shouldn't get on our clothes, and if it does, we have to wash that and take care of it. Are there any dead animals that are not najis? Fish, very good, right? Where do we get that from? The Prophet ﷺ spoke about the ocean or the sea. And he said its water is purifying, meaning you can make wudu using the water of the ocean, and whatever dies from it, unconditional, whatever comes from it and is dead, is halal for you to eat. Okay? Obviously, there is some fiqh and there's some opinion in the Hanafi madhab that there are some things that come out from the ocean that even though they come from the ocean, we cannot eat. An example of that, Imam Abu Hanifa talks about shrimp. And he advises and he believes that shrimp is not something that the Muslim should consume. And he does not base this on an ayah or a hadith, but he bases it on his analogy and understanding. And he understood that the shrimp is a bottom feeder of the ocean. That his life is, eating stuff that are generally dirt or filth, and that is how he survives. And so he decided in his fiqh that shrimp is something that he didn't label it as haram, but he labeled it as makruh tahrimi, something that is highly discouraged and the Muslim should avoid. It goes without saying that the other madhahib did not see that prohibition, they did not see that karaha, they did not see that need to abstain, and they allowed shrimp to be eaten just like salmon and kingfish and crab and lobster and everything else that we eat from the sea. But that is very good that you guys, mashallah, are all fuqaha in your own right, and you know very well that fish is permissible for the Muslim to eat even if the fish is dead. Nobody slaughters a fish, that's not something that we can do. What else is there that is najis? I think we covered a pretty comprehensive list of najasa. So these are things that are najis in the sharia, that if they are to come in contact with you, you have to have some idea of how to clean them, and clean them using water, of course, to the best of your ability, and removing what we call aynun najasa. Aynun najasa means the essence of the filth. Okay? So in Islam, you are not required to use bleach, you're not required to use OxyClean detergent or anything like that. You're required to use water to a level that the essence of the filth is removed. If the essence of the filth is removed but a smell remains or stain remains, that is not any longer najis, right? So mathalan, somebody has his clothes and let's say a baby accidentally urinates on my clothes. Obviously in our time it's customary, it's normal that I'm going to take those clothes off right away and put it in the laundry basket and put something else on, obviously. But in the event, imagine if somebody didn't have anything else to wear and the time of salah was about to expire, then I can immediately go to the washroom, wash my sleeve, and the moment it's dry and I cannot see any trace of the najasa, I cannot tell that there's najasa on this, I am free to come and make my salah, and that salah will be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We will finish in 5 minutes inshallah. I just want to get to a level that we can continue from next week with water and wudu and where we go from there. There's a concept in the fiqh of tahara that we have to be familiar with, which is hadath. Hadath. We have hadath al-akbar and hadath al-asghar. How do you translate hadath? I don't know. It basically means, and we'll try to explain, minor impurity and major impurity. That's probably the best thing that we can do to translate hadith. Hadith does not mean impurity in any way, shape, or form. It's an Arabic word, and when we study fiqh, I would advise there are some terminologies that we need to know in Arabic, and hadith is a good example of that. So you need to know that in the Islamic fiqh, there is something called hadith al-akbar, the big hadith, and something called hadith al-asghar, the small hadith. If you say small hadith and big hadith, I'm okay, but if you say minor and major impurity, that's not really what the fiqh described or defined. Now, what is hadith al-akbar? Akramakumullah. Hadith al-akbar is what happens when we go to the washroom, right? Or what happens when a person is in a state of janaba. This requires, a state of janaba will require a shower and what do you call it? If you use the washroom, you have to wash yourself and then you have to make wudu if you need to pray or something like that. Then this is one category. There is other things that are hadith asghar. Example, somebody going to sleep. If somebody was to go to sleep and you wake up, you are not in a state of purity. And if you want to pray, you have to make wudu. But the question comes, there's not necessarily any physical impurity there. Maybe nothing happened. I just went to sleep when I woke up. But this is something that the Prophet ﷺ taught us. The reality is, when you lose consciousness, you don't know what comes in and out of your system, right? And so for that reason, we define that incident as hadith al-asghar, a minor hadith, meaning it's something that requires purification to be renewed. Another example of hadith asghar is the passing of wind. Again, somebody, could say, and I experienced this in a different masjid in Brampton. A guy came and the whole, for him, the deen was falling apart. And the deen was falling apart because he said he cannot understand why he has to make wudu after passing wind. I said, Habibi, this is not, frankly, this is not a matter of aqeedah or theology. If you don't like it, I don't know what I can do for you. I don't know what you can do for you. Do you believe in Allah to begin with? Do you not know He created you? And He's the one who gave you the ability to pass that gas. Otherwise, you know what kind of problems you have in your stomach. And you want to come here and talk about, did it come out, did it not come out? There's no physical impurity left behind, so why do I have to make wudu? I don't see that as reasonable. I don't see that as logical. Go and think properly about what you're saying. I'm not denying anybody's right to think and to question. But sometimes some humbleness is required. You want to challenge the hukm of Allah when Allah is the one who gave you the ability to do that so you can feel good and you can function as a normal human being. And if you weigh it out and try to calculate, it doesn't make any sense. But in Islam we know that if somebody passes wind, their wudu is nullified, and after that incident they have to make wudu again. And we call this the minor hadith because, like I said, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's impurity left behind that has to be washed or that has to be cleaned. It's just something that happens, that the result of that is that a person is now impure, not physically, but ritually impure, and they need to renew their wudu. Can you remove impurity? So if we talk about, now I'm not talking about najasa, I'm talking about impurity, something that is dirty. Does Islam allow us, and you know what, you can add najasa to it as well, say something like urine or human feces. Can you remove that shar'an in the religion of Islam with something other than water? What do you guys think? Just to get you guys to wake up and to be alive before we conclude, we're going to have this discussion. Ustad Agus says yes. What do the rest of you guys think? Example, somebody has, trying to make it real and practical, otherwise you'll think, because the discussion has to be realistic. It cannot be too abstract. A mother is changing, a baby's diaper. That's not hers. There's another child somewhere, and she happens to, look after him for whatever reason, and his diaper is causing him an issue, and some of his feces ends up on the hand or the arm of this lady who's not his mother. It really doesn't matter if it's mother or not, but there's some other fiqh related to that I'll say for another time. That's why I'm using the example of another lady, not his mom. Now the question is, can she clean that filth with something other than water? Is that acceptable? Will it suffice in Islam? I had one opinion so far, he said yes. Who thinks no, you should use water? Nobody. Very good.
Hand sanitizer?
Hand sanitizer is very good. You can use water or no water?
Maybe you have to use only water.
You have to use only water. Good. I heard from the back.
Baby wipes.
Baby wipes, good idea. Right? It's very good. I was going to say orange juice or Coke, but baby wipes is practical. Right? Will that suffice? Can a Muslim use baby wipes? Because now we know that this is najis. Right? It's not anymore that this is oil or grease or sand from the park. This is najis. And who made it najis? Allah and His Messenger. Are we allowed in the religion of Islam to clean it with something other than water? We had, you must use water. We had, you can use other than water. We had baby wipes as an option. We have to reach some understanding together. What do you guys think?
To physically clean it is okay, but to purify it, you have to use water. If there is water.
Okay, so we have somebody saying if there's water, you should use water. We have Ustad Agus saying that to physically clean it, you can clean it with anything, but to purify it, you need water. This is a very good point. Let me complicate it for you now. The lady cleans her arm with baby wipes, okay? And then she goes to make wudu to pray. Regular wudu. Is it valid? Valid. Okay, who thinks not? She did not use water intentionally to clean the najasa. By the way, don't forget. Okay, let's go a different way. Because the arm makes it obvious, right? Because she's going to use water now to clean the arm when she makes wudu. If the baby's poop got on her dress, now what? And she cleaned it using wipes, right? Or it got on some part of her that she doesn't wash to make wudu. It got on her knee and she used wipes and then she went and made wudu. Is her salah valid after that? Do you still think yes? He thinks no. Very, very interesting. What do the rest of you think? No. No. Why? I'm not letting you guys leave easily today. We're going to figure this out together.
Physically it's not clean.
Physically it's not clean.
No, it's clean.
But it's clean. Okay. Any other ideas or opinions before we try to make sense of it all? The mess from the diaper gets on her knee. She uses wipes to clean her knee, and then the time of salah comes, she goes to make wudu and she comes to pray. Is her salah valid or not? And we have a wide spectrum of understanding. Yes, no, depends which wipe she was using, what was the brand, right? All kinds of ideas. What else? I give the brothers credit that maybe they never dealt with this. That's why they don't have much of an opinion. But Rayyan, go ahead. Say that again? Very good. Rayyan says he thinks it's allowed, her salah is valid because her job was to clean the najasa, which she did, and then made wudu and prayed.
The intention was to clean it, so she cleaned it.
Yeah, and it was successful. Like she removed the najasa from herself, right? Uncle, what do you think? Put on your fiqh hat. What do you think?
Well, as I said,
Uncle in the message is confirming. He said he never experienced it. He has no clue. Don't ask him. MashaAllah.
but the thing is, as you mentioned earlier, that if there is something like that, if you have cleaned it, like it's on the cloth, if you have cleaned it, obviously, to the best of your ability,
It's excellent. He is amazing. Number one, top-notch faqih. You know why? Because clearly he was able to understand and make connections. This is important when you study fiqh. So he picked up that earlier we said for the sisters, their clothes that get the najasa, it's enough for them to just wash it, even if something is left behind or whatever. But obviously somebody else will argue with you and say, but the sister used water to wash the clothes. But here the point is, and this is what we'll conclude with, there's no doubt, there are scholars who say that the najasa cannot be removed except by water. Water is mandatory to remove najasa. This is an opinion. However, there is another opinion, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah and others hold this opinion as well, which states that ultimately the goal is to remove the najasa. Whether you use orange juice, coke, wipes, as long as the najasa is gone and there's no trace of the najasa, like the filth, aynun najasa we're talking about, the essence of the filth is removed, then la bas, there's no harm and the person can move on with their life. So in the case of that sister, whatever got on her knee, the baby wipes, according to what we are suggesting now, which is our conclusion, the baby wipes would suffice. If she uses 1-2 baby wipes, removes all of it from her knee, there's no trace of that anymore, and then she goes and makes wudu after that, the wudu and the najasa are not connected. She removed the najasa from her body. And those scholars who say that water must be used, to be fair and to be honest, it's a tricky position to defend. Because now that there's no najasa, what do you need water for? What are you cleaning? Like, if you think about it, I use the wipes and remove the najasa. But then you come and say, no, but you must use water on your knee. But why? Because it's najas. But show me, there's no najasa. So the najasa is removed, then the problem is removed, and at that point wudu is necessary and salah can be made and life is good. The conclusion of that discussion is you may use other substances or liquids besides water to remove the najasa, so long as aynun najasa is removed, the essence of the filth is removed. Can you use orange juice or orange juice or coke to make wudu? That is something that we will discuss next week, inshallah. And next week we're talking about water itself, okay, and the state of water. So very quickly, water is pure by nature, according to the Sharia, and it is purifying, meaning it's permissible to use it to purify yourself from ritual impurities, from physical impurities. You will need more than water for spiritual cleaning of your heart. We will discuss what happens if water is mixed with pure versus impure stuff, right? So we need to make wudu using water. Everyone agrees with that. But what about if the water is mixed with something pure, like something that is not najas? What happens to that water? Can I still use it for my tahara? Can I still use it for my purification? And what if the water is mixed with something najas? How much najasa will nullify the water's ability to purify me? Right? And from there we will get into what we do with the water, how we make wudu, and all the fiqh of the wudu. What is obligatory in the wudu? What is recommended in the wudu? What are the sunnahs of the wudu? If you have less time, is there something like a short wudu that you can do? Do you have to wash every part of the wudu 3 times? These are all things that we will speak about next time, inshallah. Obviously, there are very practical matters that we will discuss related to wudu as well. Wudu in public places, in the workplace, at school, wiping over socks or shoes. Is it permissible or not permissible? When can it be done and how can it be done? Do you wipe the top or do you wipe the bottom? I saw somebody one time in the masjid wiping the bottom of their socks. Some of you may know that generally speaking, the Muslim wipes the top of their socks or their shoes. So what's the story behind that? And I'll close with the saying of Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib, who famously said, if this deen was strictly based on logic, we would have wiped the bottom of our socks, not the top. Something to remember. But the deen has inside of it hikmah from Allah and His Messenger, which sometimes my aql and your aql cannot fully grasp. It doesn't mean that it's not a good idea. It doesn't mean it's not the most sensible idea. But, the most rational brain is the one that recognizes its own limitations, right? Imagine somebody told you asked somebody who bought a new car, you tell him, how fast can it go? He says, unlimited. You know immediately, this guy is a fool. What do you mean unlimited? How many kilometers per hour can your car travel? It doesn't matter. Any kilometer per hour it can go. Do you not recognize there has to be a limit to where your car can take you in terms of speed? Likewise with the human aql. It's really good as long as the person knows its limitation. If I know the limit of my aql, wallahi, my aql is very good for me. If you know the limit of your aql is so good for you. The problem comes when people don't know the limits of their aql. And they use their aql in places that the aql is not meant to go, or they use their aql for things that their aql cannot perceive. The textbook example is, who is Allah? Who is Allah? We know from the Quran and the Hadith, from Allah's words and from His Messenger's words. But how does Allah look? Where is Allah right now? What does Allah do? How does He spend His time? If Allah didn't tell us, we don't know. And to try to figure that out by your own intellect is suicide, spiritually and mentally. Because where are you going to go with it? And so Ali ibn Abi Talib, he didn't say that wiping the top of the socks is illogical. I want everyone to understand this. He didn't say wiping the top of the socks is illogical. But he said, had the deen been solely based on logic, the Prophet would have advised us to wipe the bottom of the feet. But clearly there is more to the deen than just logic. And that is something that we should always remember, especially in an age of skepticism, where it's easy to get drawn into the idea that, we question everything, and until we can logically prove everything, we will not believe anything. This is a very popular narrative that is out there in the world. And sometimes, even there are some Muslim religion, I'll back it up with logic. There's some stuff that you cannot back up with logic, right? Not because it's not logical, but because my intellect and your intellect is limited. One simple example, the last exam that I have for this semester with Al-Azhar, inshallah, is on February 2nd. I continue to need your du'as, inshallah. I have completed 6 of my exams, inshallah, successfully. 4 remain. The last of those will be the study of things that we believe in by hearing about them, because we never saw them and we can't logically prove them. This is a science, a subject that I will study. I took a whole semester to learn this from a professor, and I'll be examined on it. And I love the concept because I didn't, hear it presented like this from anyone else before. He is presenting, and it's not his work only. Ulama al-Islam have presented this for hundreds of years. He's presenting as a science and as a concept that there's parts of our religion that the only way me and you believe in it is by hearing about it. You never saw it, and you cannot logically prove it. Example of that, existence of angels, existence of jinn, day of judgment, believing that one day somebody, may Allah protect us, named Dajjal will show up and he'll cause havoc in the world. All of these type of things that we believe in, you only believe in it by hearing about it. You never saw it, you can't touch it, and you definitely can't logically prove it. You can't and I can't logically prove that angels exist. But you believe it because Allah said it, and because you heard it from someone who has a chain of narration to go back and say that they heard it from the Prophet ﷺ, and that is why me and you have faith in it. This is what I wanted to share with you folks today. We went way over time. That's because we were busy preparing our studio. For those of you who are watching at home, may Allah bless you and fill your homes with His blessings and mercy and guidance. I encourage you to visit the masjid. Come and see us here at Masjid Istiqlal in Toronto. You will find a wonderful space where you will feel very comfortable, and you'll get to enjoy that wonderful food that we always talk about. Besides that, you will be engaged, inshallah, in the discussions related to the fiqh that is beneficial for everyone. For those of you who are here in the masjid, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward all of us for the effort that we made to spend this evening in His house. And may He subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the best in this dunya. And may He open the gates of Jannah for us in the next life. هذا والله أعلم وصلى اللهم وسلم وبارك على نبي محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.